achieve deep collaboration between attendees, while other gatherings are about gathering as many people as you can to mobilize them behind a specific vision. Sometimes you need an intimate fundraising banquet, and other times it's a rock concert that you're after. There's no right type of event which is better than another, but it is important to recognize what you're trying to achieve and choose the right medium to communicate exactly what you need to. Now, there generally is a right type of event for what your present needs are, and you shouldn't spend a whole bunch of time and money and then later on realize that you've made a poor choice to achieve the desired goals. And so that is why I want to encourage you to be intentional in figuring out the right medium. The rationale and motivation for an online event is just as important as the rationale and motivation for an in-person physical event. There's not one type of online event that you have to go down. It's often possible to mimic the aspects of a physical in-person event when you're having an online equivalency. However, it's important to recognize the differences between online and in-person events. Simply being online means you are communicating in another medium, and while this offers many benefits over in-person events, there are similarly many elements that cannot and shouldn't be reproduced. Online communication is better for intense, effective, focused, interactive information sharing, as well as focused networking, one-on-one meetings. While physical events can be much better for creating space and time, more serendipitous networking, having meals, coffees, and walks. Similarly, you will never experience the intense, ear-bleeding, emotionally high experience of being in a mosh pit at a concert online. However, you can experience a perhaps more intimate, artistic experience through a broadcast feed. It's also important that you think in a correct manner about your financial budget. It is so possible for you to lose a significant amount of money in organizing a large-scale event. However, it is important also for you to consider the financial aspects in the right way. As with many endeavors in life, it's also important not to underestimate the potential financial benefits and use false economy in planning your event. Many of the components of a successful event will involve spending, and this includes your stage lineup, your production budget, or broadcast distribution budget. Often your event will only be as strong as the weakest link. For example, you may decide to go big on funding a high-end speaker or band and then skimp on the production budget. In most scenarios, this would be a bad decision. And the same is true for online delivery of your event. There are some amazing solutions being offered on the market at the moment, and it's important that you don't skimp on providing an amazing experience for your audience. Now, we have advised many event coordinators who are hosting large events, and often the first component that is considered is the lineup of presenters on stage. Maybe it's famous bands and speakers who will have the ability to gather a crowd. Gifted and charismatic stage personalities are great, and they may form a component of your overall strategy. However, it's imperative that before you invite any presenters, you are clear about your metrics and your narrative. Now, the narrative is the story behind your event, the reason why your audience will want to attend your event rather than the other events where the same speakers and the bands will be attending. Discovering your narrative is typically a process which begins with discovering your why in hosting the event and the why your attendees have for attending. Now, following tried and trusted methods of storytelling and communicating your narrative is helpful for both in-person and for online events. Thinking of your potential attendees as the hero of the story that you are inviting them into, and with you as the trusted guide, is ultimately helpful to all parties and the vision which you would like to invite the attendees into. It may be that you're giving your audience a unique experience and opportunity to get involved in the most life-changing movement. And if that is true, you need to recognize and find ways to communicate that vision that involves your audience. This narrative must be communicated through your event brand guide and your written and video communication as you promote your event. Now, while this is true of all events, it is helpful not to miss this element when it comes to planning your online event, and consider the unique online methods to respond to this narrative. Determining your stage lineup. Who can communicate your goals most effectively in spoken, written, or musical form? Often the impetus, even the existence of an event, comes from the lineup of speakers, subject matter experts, influencers, and musical artists. While this may be the main hook to gather a big audience, the simple ability to gather an attractional stage lineup should not determine your event. The why and the narrative should always come first. Individuals or groups who present or perform from your stage need to serve that particular vision and narrative. And if this doesn't happen, there is a possibility that you, your audience, and your guest speaker will come away from this event feeling used, and this lack of cohesion almost never achieves the worthwhile purposes for which you started out. Now, when considering either a hybrid or a completely online event, it's important to consider the different mediums of communication you're employing. A stage in front of 50,000 people in an arena versus small screens in front of 1 million people are two entirely different mediums. Although the latter is reaching a much bigger audience, a small screen is always a much more intimate medium and requires an approach where the audience is being addressed in a more direct, one-on-one manner, much like I'm doing now. When considering your lineup, also consider how you're going to communicate to both audiences most effectively, and consider how your lineup is going to do this. Audience engagement is important in both mediums of communication. Now, it's clear to all of us that the world was taken by surprise by the COVID-19 pandemic. And the one question that we've received more than any others throughout this time is predicated on the longing to return to in-person events, but then people say how things will change in a post-COVID world with regard to online events. And our response has long been that we also long for the return to in-person events that we're seeing now. However, online events are not going away. Even before COVID, the online component of events was increasingly in demand, and the complexity was also increasing. So this is an area you shouldn't ignore for too much longer. So that's pretty much all there is for this section. So let's go through our checklist. Often when you're starting to think about your event, you have something in your mind. Maybe it's a full room, a conference center, or a stadium buzzing with life and activity. And immediately, what typically happens is you go into planning mode to see how you can achieve that goal. But I want to encourage you to go back just a little bit further before we begin the planning phase and ask some more existential questions. So number one, I want to figure out your why. Whether you're having an in-person event or an online event, one of the first things you need to determine is what exactly the metrics of your success are in the event. These metrics are not primarily related to the number of people attending the event, although getting a big crowd may certainly be connected to your metrics. If you're hosting a product or a service launch, your ultimate goal will be related to the sales that are derived from this event. The amount of people who attend the event may therefore be a key indicator of success, but getting the wrong crowd that results in very few sales may lead you to adjust your strategy later on. In this regard, just getting the big crowd might make you feel good in the moment, but it would be more helpful for your team to talk about the real metric of sales and plan towards that particular goal. Now, if your goal is to communicate your vision to your superfans, your radical core audience, having a huge crowd with hundreds of thousands of people may surprisingly actually work against your main metric. If your audience wants to be addressed as if they are the only one that matters, including them just as one of the many thousands of the audience may be a bad idea. So I want you to think deeply about the metric of success, whether it's online or in person, and work with your team to achieve that particular goal. Now, let's translate some of these thoughts to putting on an online event. Now, in the TV industry, getting the eyeballs is a key indicator of success. Large numbers are also attractive to online broadcasters as they can result in advertising revenue. The strategy for engaging your audience online may be the same, simply gathering a big crowd. And if a simple big crowd is the objective, then maybe the right strategy is simply to go out on all the platforms like YouTube and Facebook. But if you're really honest with yourself and think about it, your goal is probably more than simply the eyeballs. And so when you think about it, there are some limitations to that strategy. Maybe you don't want to simply give away all your audience's data to those particular social media platforms. Maybe you want to serve them yourself. And that's why we're seeing the emergence of many OTT media platforms. Previously, you would watch content through the major media outlets, ABC, NBC, BBC, now Facebook and YouTube. And now the content makers are going, quote unquote, over the top to reach their markets directly. Think about Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, and the multitude of other niche brand video channels who are engaging their core audience directly. Getting to know who your core audience is, your super fans, your radical core, and engaging them around topics that are relevant to their life may be a more efficient and effective way to energize your people, who will then leave the event and immediately sell the vision to 10 more of their friends and therefore grow your superfan radical core. Now, choosing the right type of event is important. There are different types of people, there are different types of objectives, there are different types of events. It's important to understand the difference between